covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. And today on the program, I am rating the WWE Draft 2019. I subjected myself to the good, bad, and ugly. So round by round, I'm going to analyze every single draft choice. And also towards the end of the program, I will discuss the current state of the company. This seems to be a hot topic, and I've noted over the past couple of weeks, I've been pretty discontent with the product. I've been mostly watching NWA Power, AEW Dynamite, NXT, and NXT UK, but I did tune into the most recent episode of SmackDown and Raw, so I'm going to give you my thoughts, the lay of the land, and of course, the draft choices round by round, and that starts right now.
Our topic of the week.
Oh, we don't waste any time. We dive right into the topic of the week. And before we get to results and analysis, here are the details you need to know surrounding the 2019 WWE Draft. The list of eligible wrestlers consisted of about 70, and that is from Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and 205 Live rosters, as well as tag teams. They were all eligible to be drafted. This also included champions, a little perplexing. I'll get to that shortly. Now, the 24/7 champion and the women's tag team champions are eligible to be drafted, but of course, they have to defend their respective titles across the brands. Now, the rules of the draft are the following. Up to 30 picks were made on the October 11th edition of SmackDown, while there were 41 picks on the October 14th edition of Monday Night Raw. For every 2 draft picks for SmackDown, Raw will receive 3 picks. Now, of course, this is due to the fact that SmackDown is a 2-hour show, Raw is a 3-hour show. Tag teams count as 1 pick unless Fox or USA specifically only want a single member from the team as their pick. Yes, there's a prime example of this coming up, and any undrafted wrestlers will immediately be declared free agents and able to sign with the brand of their choosing. I don't know about you, that seems like a lot of rules to get to. So let's dive into the analysis pick by pick, and also I will declare the winning brand of each round. Again, I will look at quality over quantity, because if we're going by quantity, Raw wins every single round, technically, right? So WWE was presenting this draft with elements of realism to make it seem like executives from the USA Network and Fox are drafting based on star power and potential. They're making this seem like the NFL draft, right? Honestly, this may have sounded better on paper, since the execution left a lot to be desired. The war rooms, they felt hokey and artificial. These quote-unquote executives are individuals you've never seen before, right? You just know that they're actors. And by the way, they were wearing the exact same clothing as they were on SmackDown and Raw. So you know that these were pre-canned, pre-taped segments, right? So let's get to day one. This was on SmackDown last week. To determine the first pick, it was Roman Reigns representing SmackDown versus Seth Rollins representing Raw. They faced off to determine the first overall draft pick. The match was fine, but failed to live up to expectations. And that's because Rollins hyped it up on Twitter saying, this is going to be a massive clash. It's a pay-per-view match. It really wasn't. In the end, the Fiend Bray Wyatt climbed through the ring. He pulled Seth Rollins down. Fortunately, Seth was able to narrowly escape. This interference led to a disqualification. The fans were initially pretty confused. So what did that mean? Raw got the first pick, and they went with the man, Becky Lynch, the Raw Women's Champion, the top pick in the WWE Draft 2019. It makes sense if we're talking about star power. We're talking about potential. The man, Becky Lynch, is as hot as anyone right now. Plus, she's a champion, so there is prestige there. So I was thinking they would draft Brock Lesnar or Seth Rollins next. Instead, it was Roman Reigns to SmackDown. I get it. Also, a massive name, positioned as one of the main faces of the company. Pick number 3, the OC. A little surprising, but you get all 3 members. Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, and the United States champion AJ Styles, so quite the bargain. And then it was the Fiend Bray Wyatt, a man who was arguably the hottest character in the entire industry, but post Hell in a Cell has lost a lot of momentum. He goes over to SmackDown. I thought that was a pretty good pick. Obviously, Fox wants the theatrics. They want the larger-than-life persona. And then over to Raw, Drew McIntyre, a man with so much potential. He needs to almost rebuild his character because he has also lost a ton of momentum. At one point, I believed that he was going to be the Universal Champion. That can still occur. He's still a viable contender. So the winner of round one to me is Raw, just based on the fact that you have Becky Lynch, all three members of the OC, and Drew McIntyre. Yes, I'm not going for quantity over quality here, but that's still some great quality talent when you're looking at it. Let's pause for a moment. Do you notice anything weird about those choices? No Brock Lesnar, no Seth Rollins. So that means no WWE World Champion, no Universal Champion picked in the first round. A little perplexing to me. So let's get to round number 2. Over to Raw. It's the Viper Randy Orton, the veteran. Still has some gas left in the tank. He is well-rounded. I'm sure he will do fine on Team Red. Over to SmackDown, I believe a huge pick. I actually thought that she might go in round 1, but in round 2, it is the boss, Sasha Banks. Very wise for SmackDown to draft her. Over to Raw. He's the man that's basically the modern-day Spider-Man. It is Ricochet, which I believe is another stellar pick for Team Red. Then you have Braun Strowman heading over to SmackDown. That's a big one, too, both from a physical imposing standpoint and the fact that he has some name recognition and name value. And then Bobby Lashley over to Raw, which actually surprised me because even though Bobby Lashley is already being positioned pretty heavily on Monday Night Raw, especially in that angle with Lana and Rusev, I'm surprised to see him drafted so high. The winner of round 2 in my eyes has to be SmackDown because the boss Sasha Banks is a game changer and also Braun Strowman as well. Round 3, and here's where it gets really strange. Alexa Bliss drafted to Raw. Again, when it comes to the rules, remember the USA Network executives or Fox can actually draft somebody as an individual member instead of an actual team. So they went with Alexa Bliss separately, but it's still quite weird because basically, as you'll see as time goes on here, every other tag team was drafted together except this one. So again, pretty solid pick. Obviously, everybody knows who Alexa Bliss is, a multi-time champion both on SmackDown and Raw. Makes sense. Lacey Evans over to SmackDown. A lot of potential there. She's still growing as a performer. Over to Raw, Kevin Owens. Shocking that he has moved all the way down to round 3. Actually, a couple of drafts ago, he was even much lower than that. So he took his frustrations out on Twitter. I believe he said something along the lines of, I'm not as good as I think I am, obviously, so there's a lot of work to do. The Revival as a team, they're over to SmackDown. Now, keep in mind, I totally forgot they are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, so it makes sense to go over to Team Blue. And Natalya remains on Raw. The winner of round 3, in my eyes, has to be Monday Night Raw. We get to round 4, the final round on Friday Night SmackDown. Heading over to Raw, the Viking Raiders, they had a big Monday. We'll get to that momentarily. Lucha House Party. That's all 3 members heading over to SmackDown. Grand Metalik, Lince Dorado, and Kalisto. I'm surprised they actually went this high because keep in mind, night 2 is on Monday Night Raw. Nikki Cross ends up in the same destination as Alexa Bliss, but not drafted as a team. That's a complete waste of a pick if you ask me for Raw. So the USA Network executives clearly had a lapse of judgment there. And then Heavy Machinery heads over to SmackDown, the Street Profits on Monday Night Raw. I believe the winner of round 4, Monday Night Raw. Overall, the first night of the draft was simply all over the place. And despite an emphasis on realism, it was anything but that. Also, Stephanie really seemed to lack genuine enthusiasm when announcing the picks. Also, I've said it before, I'll state it again, why wasn't Seth or Brock drafted on Friday? Given their new focus on authenticity, that was perhaps the strangest of all, and the same applies to names such as Aleister Black, Bayley, Charlotte, and many others. They would be the sensible choices over Lucha House Party. No offense to them, but they're not moving the needle. People are not paying money to see Lucha House Party on a weekly basis. Then over the course of the weekend, WWE announced the following draft picks on their website. Apollo Crews, loads of potential over to SmackDown. Drew Gulak, I'll speak about him in just a second, over to SmackDown. I thought that was big. EC3 over to Raw. Hopefully he finds his voice and he's not just a mute on a weekly basis. Eric Young over to Raw. He basically has no momentum since Sanity has been split apart. Heath Slater over to SmackDown. Sin Cara, who apparently is still employed, over to Raw. Tamina, also surprising, she's still active on the roster, over to SmackDown. And the B Team over to SmackDown. The winner of this draft update, I am siding with SmackDown. One of the biggest sleeper picks of this entire draft wasn't even televised, and that's Drew Gulak heading over to SmackDown. He has consistently been one of the best performers under the WWE umbrella over the past year. He can also hold his own on the microphone. I believe he's going to have great success on Team Blue. Day 2 of the draft took place on Monday Night Raw. Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair competed for an opportunity to see which brand gets the first pick. Naturally, it was Becky representing Raw, Charlotte representing SmackDown. A frustrated Charlotte Flair lost focus, and Becky Lynch took advantage with a quick roll-up victory. Raw, once again, had the top pick. Stephanie McMahon made another appearance. She acted as the host, restating that USA Fox executives were strategizing over the picks. So who is going to go number 1 on day 2, round 1? It is Mr. Burn It Down himself, the Universal Champion, Seth Rollins. An entire draft day too late. He should have been in the first round of SmackDown. Why did it take so long? And then draft pick number 2. This makes sense, especially when it comes to legitimacy, name recognition, power, you name it. The Beast, Brock Lesnar, and with him comes Paul Heyman. Basically serving double duty because remember, he's the executive producer, executive director of Monday Night Raw. So Brock Lesnar over to SmackDown. Again, he's the WWE Champion. Charlotte Flair over to Monday Night Raw. A little surprising. The New Day, that is Big E, Xavier Woods, and Kofi Kingston over to SmackDown. And Andrade with Zelina Vega over to Raw. Again, why in the blue hell, no pun intended, were the Universal and World Champions drafted on the second night? If that was the case, just remove them from the draft altogether. The winner of round 1, I'm going with Raw. They have more youth and potential on their side since Brock likely won't appear that much on Friday nights unless Fox decides to put a lot of dollars into Brock Lesnar's bank account. I love this quote before we get to round 2. Jerry Lawler asked the question, why does Raw have more picks than SmackDown? Vic Joseph basically had to explain, because Raw is an extra hour in length. Clearly, Jerry doesn't pay attention to his own show. Let's get to round number 2. The Kabuki Warriors over to Monday Night Raw. That's Asuka and Kairi Sane. I like those picks. Keep in mind, they are the women's tag team champions. Now, further to that, let's say that Kairi Sane and Asuka lose those championships. They will both stay permanently on Raw. So you have 2 solid picks there in their women's division. Daniel Bryan over to SmackDown. One hell of a pick. Always the perennial underdog, but a true main eventer, one of the most unselfish wrestlers on the roster. Rusev drafted pretty high, actually. He's over to Raw. You know they're going to keep him in that angle with Bobby Lashley and Lana. It just won't escape us no matter how far we want to run from it. Bayley over to SmackDown. She is the SmackDown Women's Champion. It makes sense. I felt as though she would be drafted higher than this. Same applies to Aleister Black on Monday Night Raw. Chock full of potential. We still haven't even seen him scratch the surface on the main roster. Winner of round 2, I'm saying a tie. SmackDown gets the star power, but Raw earns plenty of potential. We witnessed a really entertaining tag team match between the Viking Raiders, newly drafted over to Raw, and Rude and Ziggler, a.k.a. Rudolph. Plenty of believable near falls. And following the Viking experience, which is that assisted pop-up power slam, we had new Raw Tag Team Champions. That's how you make an impact on draft day number 2. In round 3, the athletic, high-flying Cedric Alexander. He's a perfect fit for Monday Night Raw. Shinsuke Nakamura over to SmackDown, I'm assuming with Sami Zayn. Who knows for sure? He is the Intercontinental Champion. This one was a surprise, especially so high on the list. Humberto Carrillo over to Raw. Not many people know who he is. Of course, he was on 205 Live. He's also appeared on NXT. Ali over to SmackDown. I believe he is very marketable, extremely talented in the ring, believable on the microphone. That's a great pick. Eric Rowan over to Raw. I suppose he is not a tag team with Luke Harper, or USA Network executives just wanted him solo. Winner of round 3 in my eyes, SmackDown. Over to round 4, man often forgotten, Buddy Murphy over to Raw. Buddy Murphy is another prime example of a proverbial sleeper pick. He was quickly gaining momentum on SmackDown by consistently delivering stellar performances, but that momentum stalled when he was strangely removed from television with no explanation. Two veterans, very established too. You know what you're getting with both of them as a tag team, Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler over to SmackDown. The former WWE champion, yes, I'm going to remind you of this, Jinder Mahal. I thought this was pretty high. Over to Raw. Carmella over to SmackDown. And this is a shame that they're split up. R-Truth, the 24/7 champion, over to Raw. So that means that they are split up. Now, keep in mind, R-Truth can still appear on SmackDown because he is the 24/7 champion. Winner of round 4. I'm going with SmackDown just because you have Roode and Ziggler, so much you can do with them, and Carmella is a pretty well-established name in the women's division. Before I get to round 5, I can't ignore both of these horrific segments. There was a scene that aired where Lana was lying on a table in a towel receiving a massage from a masseuse. The masseuse asks, "How's it going?" Lana tells her she likes it harder. The masseuse left the room. Bobby Lashley enters in a towel, tags in basically, starts giving Lana a massage. There were a few more awkward sexual jokes and flirting. It was cringeworthy writing and acting at its finest. I don't know how they can defend this. And then there was a contract signing between Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman. Obviously, this is an attraction bout taking place at Crown Jewel, and that's on Halloween. Nothing kills tension more than two grown men sitting across from each other and aggressively cutting a promo while they sign a piece of paper. That's why I've always despised contract signing segments. It makes both of them look weak, and it's devoid of proper psychology because basically you would want to be punching each other. There's no security there. You just have to be on your best behavior, sign a contract, and then politely leave the ring. Never gonna happen. Round 5, drafted first, the Samoan submission machine, currently on the shelf, nursing an injury, Samoa Joe on Monday Night Raw. When he is fully healed, you can easily insert him into a main event feud. He exudes believability. I love him as a top pick. I'm surprised he did not go higher, but again, the injury may have had something to do with that. Surprisingly low, and now here's something that's interesting. The Miz has The Miz and Mrs. that airs on the USA Network, yet he was drafted over to SmackDown on Fox. Again, I'm surprised that the mighty have fallen this much. He's a pretty big name. With all due respect, I mean, yes, his movies typically go straight to DVD or straight to streaming. This is 2019, but still, I figured he would go a little bit higher. Akira Tozawa, I believe, actually went higher than I expected, not taking anything away from his talent. I'm a big fan. He's over on Monday Night Raw. King Baron Corbin, despite winning King of the Ring, he's in round 5 on night 2, over to SmackDown. And Shelton Benjamin, who noted on Twitter he wants his original theme song back, Ain't No Stoppin' Me Now. Find that petition, I'll sign it, over to Monday Night Raw. The winner of round 5, I'm giving it to SmackDown just based on the name value. I want to give it to Raw solely because of Samoa Joe, but The Miz, and yes, even Baron Corbin, people may despise him, but he does have some name recognition, lead SmackDown to victory in my eyes. WWE clearly hasn't learned their lesson because they officially announced Seth Rollins versus The Fiend Bray Wyatt in a Falls Count Anywhere match at Crown Jewel. This is a must-lose situation. Think about it. You know there's zero chance Bray Wyatt wins because he appears on SmackDown. Seth Rollins, you don't want to take the Universal Championship off him too soon, but another loss for Bray Wyatt will absolutely destroy his momentum. So why even book this match, especially after Hell in a Cell? In the 6th and final round, Rey Mysterio over to Monday Night Raw, currently injured. The future Hall of Famer brings a lot of credibility to Team Red. When he is fully healthy, he'll engage in some fresh feuds. He's looked better than ever over the past 12 months, so I'm okay with that. Hate the name, love the talent, Shorty Gable over to SmackDown. Can I just call him Chad Gable? I'm just going to break it and just call him Chad Gable. Titus O'Neil, who I often forget is still an active performer, over to Monday Night Raw. Now, here's someone I totally forgot about. When I saw the graphic, I thought, ooh, drafted really low, and he was positioned heavily on television for a matter of months. Elias. I want to walk with Elias, and you'll walk with him over on SmackDown. And Liv Morgan, who apparently is going through a bit of a transformation, TBD, we'll see what this turns out like on Monday Night Raw. I believe the winner of round 6, SmackDown. Much of that has to do with Gable and Elias, of course. Oh, the hits just keep on coming. On Tuesday, WWE COO The Game Triple H announced on WWE Backstage, which debuted on Fox, that Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross were traded to Friday Night SmackDown. In exchange, I bet you're thinking, who do they get in return? Raw will get future draft pick considerations. Yes, this was apparently the big blockbuster deal they were advertising. Totally underwhelming if you ask me. Full disclosure, I'm a little worked up over some of these undrafted selections. And the reason why is WWE has placed such an emphasis on quote-unquote realism when it relates to this draft. Well, realistically, why would some of these names remain undrafted from night 1 or night 2? It makes zero sense. It is utterly perplexing. But let's get to who was drafted to Monday Night Raw. Now, according to the rules, I guess they can just pick and choose whatever brand they want. Again, they don't really make that all too clear. So heading over to Raw, No Way Jose, Mojo Riley, Zack Ryder, and Kurt Hawkins. This really surprised me. Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. Why? Former women's tag team champions. They're pretty recognizable. Sarah Logan, AOP. They were announced today via WWE.com. And the hits, they just keep on coming. Heading over to Friday Night SmackDown, Luke Harper, completely overlooked. Cesaro, are you kidding me? So you're meaning to tell me Titus O'Neil, Lucha House Party, many others who, in my opinion, were undeserving, are selected over Cesaro? There's a reason why he continues to rank as the most underrated wrestler in so many different publications. He deserves more than this. One of the most complete performers in the business today. Drake Maverick, here's a shocker. Fire and Desire, Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. Why were they not drafted? At one point, they were top contenders for the Women's Tag Team Championships, and then Dana Brooke as well. So going over the full roster of talent, this leaves the following superstars as the remaining free agents left to be assigned to a brand. The Ascension, who has essentially disappeared at this point. The Big Show, who I believe is closer to retirement. The Colognes, yes, they are somehow still employed. We just never see them featured. Ember Moon, who's currently injured. Jeff Hardy, he should probably get his life straightened out. He's been drinking and driving yet again. Matt Hardy. Lars Sullivan, also injured. Mickie James, who has been commentating on Main Event. I'm not sure if she is retired or not. Naomi, not a word about her. Nia Jax, I believe she's still injured. Ruby Riott just had surgery, I think recently. Sheamus, there were some concussion issues reportedly there. Will he be back? Who knows? And the Usos, also some drinking and driving issues there, I believe, with Jimmy. So, yeah, that's really who's left in terms of free agents who will be assigned to either Raw or SmackDown over the next couple of months. So which brand won the draft? I believe the overall winner by a sizable margin was SmackDown. They have Brock Lesnar, The Fiend Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, The Boss Sasha Banks, Bayley, Daniel Bryan, all 3 members of the New Day, Braun Strowman, and Alexa Bliss, just to name a few. My final thoughts, this was tough to get through, I'm not going to lie. It was arguably one of the worst drafts to date and just failed to hit the mark in terms of any semblance of excitement. The focus on realism certainly didn't help as it felt so incredibly hokey, with the overproduced USA and Fox war rooms, with actors playing the roles of the executives, cheering over practically every pick. And then also worth noting, Eric Bischoff was reportedly fired and replaced with Bruce Pritchard as the executive director of SmackDown. For better or worse, Bruce knows Vince's vision better than virtually anyone else around him. So it's going to be interesting to see how SmackDown is executed moving forward. This has been a very strange period for WWE, and it will continue to be. I noted off the hop I would provide an update on the status of the company, and this is derived from facts and absolutes, not just opinion. Attendance at shows has been on the decline over the past couple of years. Entire house show loops have been canceled, not just a show here or there, but sets of 4 or 5. Television ratings have also seen a noticeable dip across all networks. It's obviously too early to tell with Fox, though. We'll have to see over a prolonged period of time. Raw and NXT remain on the USA Network, while SmackDown has moved to Fox, creating almost inner competition between networks in rating supremacy. The WWE subscription numbers have remained pretty stagnant. Despite seeing steady growth year over year since launching in 2014, the numbers have remained virtually the same since 2018. In fact, there was a noticeable drop following the initial Crown Jewel event. The company, at least to me, is really lacking mainstream stars, as they've decided to push the brand front and center as opposed to the stars who could potentially leave them. Case in point, John Cena. Perfect example. Since he left, there was a noticeable gap since stepping away. So they don't want to push these superstars who could move on to movies or television or perhaps another company. They would rather push the company and the brand front and center. In terms of the creative, the shows tend to feel overly scripted, recycled, and lacking compelling content. This is where a lot of the frustration is taking place with fans, and we just want something straightforward. Really, when you think about it, grab our attention and maintain our interest. That's all you need to do. Keep it simple. And it goes without saying, WWE alienated a big portion of its audience by deciding to accept the Saudi Arabia deal, which reportedly sees them earn $20 to $40 million per event over the next 10 years. Oddly enough, they are well aware of the controversy, since WWE rarely uses the words Saudi Arabia in any promotional packages or graphics. In fact, they actually shy away from it. Listen to this juxtaposition, though. Despite all the drawbacks I just listed and the fact that many fans and critics believe the product is perhaps the weakest it has been in years, 2019 will be arguably the most profitable year in the history of the company. They will earn $205 million per year over the next 5 years due to that Fox deal. And as I noted, the Saudi Arabia deal will also bank them $20 to $40 million per show. So if they average 2 shows per year, that's close to $80 million. Plus, you can factor in revenue earned from the WWE Network, merch, and live events. As is the case with many companies, they are chasing the money over the quality. And you know what? They're still very, very profitable, so the ship keeps on moving ahead. Meanwhile, NWA Power, AEW Dynamite, and NXT were all solid episodes this week and continue to present alternatives to Raw and SmackDown, of course, NXT UK as well. So far, the first 3 weeks of AEW Dynamite has generated legitimate excitement and presented a viable alternative in the marketplace. Plus, and I'm going to be at this event, AEW Full Gear on November 9th is already primed to be a great event. And then with NWA Power, it is perhaps the biggest surprise hit on a weekly basis, and with NXT, despite living under the WWE umbrella, it is a well-oiled machine and far superior to anything presented on Raw and SmackDown. My point here is I don't know how often I could go through with these episodes rating an entire draft when it was just not enjoyable. I get far more enjoyment watching NWA Power, the new AEW program, and NXT. So you will see a lot more content focused on those programs. That's not to say I will stop cold turkey and never cover Raw, SmackDown, or the pay-per-views. It just means I'm going to pull back a bit. I need to cleanse my palate. I need to reflect. I need to watch my content Tuesdays to Thursdays because that's what brings me the most joy. And I hope this episode brought you joy. It was a little painful to go through, but you know what? There were moments that were good along the way as well, too, through the WWE Draft. And you know what? I really appreciate the support. It means a lot. There's a lot of choices out there. There's wrestling personalities and established personalities that host different podcasts, and yet you click play here for a reason, and I hope it's because you find the content compelling. If you would do one thing for me, it would mean a lot. Rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends, family, and fellow wrestling fans to tune in on a weekly basis. It's a big help, and I see the impact that has. Until next week, happy trails to you until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.